righty, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is going to be a fabulous conversation. Let me explain what we're doing. So this is Whoamentoring Works. I am the executive director, Dr. Kymrae Mizell, and I have with me a very special guest, a very special organization and leader of this organization. The organization is Women in Distress of Broward County. And the CEO, we got the CEO in the building with us today, and her name is Dr. Linda L. Parker. And so we are going to be talking about our theme of this month. Whoamentoring Works theme is domestic violence. As obviously October, they also advocate and do a lot of educating, particularly this month, the Women in Distress organization. So what we wanted to do was we have been wanting to partner with this organization for a long time, but we haven't really tapped them yet. We've been working on some other things, in a timely order, and things just worked out the way they should always, and the way they always do, right? And so we finally got a chance to connect with this organization for our theme this month, domestic violence. And Women in Distress, they really, really focus on domestic violence. So it's a perfect partnership for what we want to discuss today. And so this is what we call Whoamentoring Works. We call this the Whoa Women Wisdom series. And so this part of the series, we are going to be talking about domestic violence due to it being October. And so we've been posting, sending a lot of messaging to our followers and our members and partners over the month of October. And now we are going to have this chat with this wonderful, tremendous woman, Dr. Parker. And I want to introduce you to her. So welcome, 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 Dr. Linda Parker.
Thank you so much for inviting me to chat. I'm really excited.
Yeah, we are going to talk about a lot of different things here. So what I first want to do, though, is I would like to share with everyone a little bit about who you are, Dr. Parker. I want to share your bio. So tell me, correct me, stop me if I'm messing up anything, because I'm going to try to do my very best. So I know that you have over 16 years of experience in human service and domestic violence services. And you have been an educator and an administrator at a university level, which I did not know that about you, but we share that. We share that commonality. So that's pretty cool there. And since 2020, you have now taken over this role as the president and CEO of Women in Distress here in Broward County. Yes.
Yes,
so prior to that, though, Doc, you were an executive director of victim services at the Peace River Center in Polk County. Mm-hmm. Okay. And prior to that, prior to relocating to Florida, right, you were in Iowa. And you held director and vice president positions at William Penn University in West Des Moines, Iowa. Right. Yes. So you have really been in the trenches of helping people at that age, that turning point, that college level point. We both kind of share that. So that's really interesting that we have that in common. And also an adjunct professor like me as well. But you were an adjunct at William Penn University, and you still are. You still are, right?
I don't teach as much anymore. Since I took the job at Women in Distress, it's taken up a lot of my time. So I'm kind of on hold for teaching. It was a little bit of a drinking through a fire hose a little bit.
Hey, you've got a lot of work. You're the president and CEO of such a tremendous organization that is doing a lot of work that it takes a special person to do this kind of work. So we commend and we applaud you for your work and your efforts daily. I want to say, though, that earlier in your career, though, you also were a domestic violence advocate at Children and Families of Iowa and a counselor for women transitioning from prison. There's another thing we have in common. We really have to talk, and we will more now that, we're getting to know that not only did I want to work with you guys through the Whoamentoring Works, but now we have some commonality. So we really, really should discuss that, and we will offline. So I'm excited about that. But I want to share Women in Distress, who you are. You are a nationally accredited, state certified, full service domestic violence center serving all of the county of Broward in the state of Florida. And
Absolutely.
your mission is to stop domestic violence abuse for everyone through intervention, education, and advocacy. Yes. You know what? You also have a 24-hour crisis line and an emergency shelter and counseling, right? Services. And the biggest thing that I just learned while I was, researching before we spoke, you all have a thrift shop as well.
Yes, it's huge. Also, it's about 10,000 square feet in Margate. And we do a lot of, that thrift store really helps with our mission for about, we bring in about $100,000 or so in help. But the other thing the thrift store does that we don't really advertise is it's also the purview for the survivors to get things that they need. So they can go shopping in there whenever they want. And when they transition to their new house, we use the thrift store to be able to get them new furniture, household goods. So it serves a dual purpose.
Wow, that is awesome. That is phenomenal. I love that. And you also, well, we'll talk about your upcoming things that you're working on a little later. How's that? We're going to talk about your programs and your events and even your ways to the ways that everyone can give and support what you're doing. How's that? We'll get
Absolutely.
to that.
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. So I want to dive into our chat now. So that we have a little bit of we stay on track with time and everything, right? So domestic violence, right? This is a major public health problem. And since this is a women empowering type of chat, it's also a violation of women's human rights too, which is a piece that, sometimes people don't really want to talk about. It's very taboo, because it's just about women. But, this is a health problem because from what I've researched, Doc, is that when you are experiencing this, you also would, there's high rates or statistics that you will end up having some sort of mental health disorder. You will have maybe chronic disease and infections, right? Talk to us a little bit about how domestic violence impacts your health and why this is such a major public health problem.
So I'll share with you, it's actually really timely we're having this conversation because I sat on a meeting today with the local hospitals talking about assessing for services. And one of the things they've seen is a 22% increase in domestic violence since 2019. And we can kind of talk through the demographics of the major groups that they're seeing that are really struggling. But those health outcomes then lead, to your point, to other things, right? So they're coming to the hospital because they have it may not even be DV related. It may be stress related. It may be anxiety related. It may be, I have an appendix that's whatever that is. And when they're doing their analyzing, they're realizing that a lot of these health issues are tied back to the domestic violence and the stress that people are facing. Wow. And it's a community issue too. I think one of the things that we talk about being health, but it's a community problem. Mm-hmm. It falls on women to deal with because it always falls on women to deal with, because we carry that burden, right? And because we carry that burden and because the onus is always put on us to deal with all of these things, that's how we end up being the folks that are always doing the stuff, right? Yes. And so we just, we carry it. We've always carried it. Yes. They think about and look at history.
Right. Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Very, very telling stuff. Even I looked up some statistics and some data, and it was just incredible to me. I had no idea these stats were so so just horrible almost. You don't even realize it because you're not in the trenches of it until you actually start to read about it and research and learn about it. And I want to share some of these with our viewers here, what I did find. And of course you can add to any of this as we go through this, but the World Health Organization, they indicated that globally, let's see what I have here, 1 in 3, 30% of women worldwide have been subjected to either physical or sexual intimate partner violence and, or non-partner sexual violence in their lifetime. And 500
gone up. It used to be 1 in 4. It's actually gone up. It used to be
Whoa.
1 in 4 and 1 in like 7 men. And I think it's even down for men, like 1 in 6 and 1 in 3.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. You know, okay, so we once we get through these stats, I want to talk about some things about how we can, you know, be we can be advocates and do our part too in this, even if we haven't experienced it. Someone we know probably has, right, based on these stats. And then they say over 500,000 women are physically assaulted or raped by an intimate partner in the US each year. Yeah. In 2018, the United Nations reported that they found 50,000 women are killed, murdered each year by their intimate partners. And globally, they say, let's see, almost 1/3. Okay, here's, I guess, the age range. They say ages 15 to 49, 1/3, 27% of women aged 15 to 49 who have been in a relationship report that they have been subjected to some form of physical or sexual violence by their intimate partner. You know, but that piece there's a clause there that says report, that reported this.
Absolutely.
So I wonder, Doc, like, how many more are actually experiencing?
There's a ton more. I mean, I'll just tell you from the standpoint of women in distress, I will say that we probably, for as many folks as we have reporting, there's 2 that do not. So in the domestic violence shelter, and of course we don't put that upon anyone for a variety of reasons, and we can talk about those, but
Okay.
you know, I think it's important to know that the numbers that are reported are numbers that are so low as compared to what we really see on a day-to-day basis. We really do see at least double that are not reporting to law enforcement.
Okay. Wow. Ooh, that's terrible, terrible, terrible.
Yeah.
Okay. So mental health, right? Okay, we talked about it being a public health issue. Now let's talk about how this ties into a mental health issue, right? Because mental health has been something that we have slowly, and I mean very slowly, been trying to figure out how we can assist those that deal and struggle with the challenges of mental health day to day, and how we don't talk enough about it, and no one who has the issue wants to talk about it. So how does domestic violence impact those triggering things or those trauma, you know, points for people?
You know, we see a lot of PTSD. We see a lot, you know, sometimes the physical violence is easier to overcome than the psychological and emotional damage that happens as a result of domestic violence.
Yeah.
And so it slowly eats away, right? And then the other part of that is the support system that a survivor has an impact on their mental health, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, if you've got a support system of folks around you that are like, oh, you know, we love you and we're going to support you regardless of what happens, the mental health and the bounce back for those survivors, so much better. I mean, night and day better. The survivors that come to us and say, my family have left me because I wouldn't leave him, or my friends have all left because they got frustrated with me because I wouldn't leave. Those are the folks that end up having more long-term mental health issues because there's no support. So whereas we would say, you know, gather your friends around, gather your family, talk to your church members, gather those folks around you that provide that stability. By the time they get to us, most of that is gone. It's just become too much for the family and the friends and the church to deal with, right? You know, we know it takes a victim about 9 times before she finally leaves. So that's 9 times of coming back to the shelter, 9 times of leaving and coming back and hoping that it's going to get better, right? And abusers work off of a very cyclical kind of routine. So you can almost not all of them, but for a traditional abuser, you can almost see the cycle. And so getting stuck in that cycle, man, it's hard to get out of. And you really want them to be successful and you really want to see difference, but it's got to be a decision they make for themselves. And that time of decision making can sometimes have an impact on that mental health piase. And then COVID didn't help that, you know, COVID and being isolated.
Right. You've seen a lot of rates go up since then?
Oh yeah, it's probably, you know, we initially took a dive because everyone kind of panicked and didn't think we were open. And then also people couldn't get out of their homes. You know, the ways that we safety plan with survivors to tell them to leave were not available. So we had to switch directions and kind of safety plan inside the home, which is not something the staff were used to doing. And it's tricky because you never want to keep someone in a house that's not safe. But also they have to be ready to leave and be prepared.
Right.
And sometimes that's just as scary.
Yes. I read somewhere that they should be planning it without communicating that to the abuser. You know, they can't tell them, and they've got to, you know, almost like hide certain things, the plan, you know, or the bags, or the, you know, the birth certificates, the photos, whatever it is that you're going to take with you, you know, like it can't look like you're on your way out. Oh my gosh, that was a lot. I'm like, wait, I want to say something, to ask you more.
You know, I would say, you asked me about the length. I will say that the cases that we're seeing now are more extreme. So we've had more shooting cases where there's been more guns involved. We've had, luckily, not everyone has resolved in death. We've had more aggressive and what we consider code as high lethality cases. So high lethality for us is a set of behaviors that a batterer will show that will tend to end up in a death resulting if there's no intervention given.
Gotcha.
Things like choking. Choking to passing out is an indicator that the next step may be result in a death. So in a situation where the batterer is choking the victim, we consider that high lethality, and we recommend removal immediately from the house.
Oh my gosh, wow.
So other things like that we've been seeing more of. But I think everybody's kind of seeing that across the board. You know, mental health is higher, substance abuse is higher.
Right.
You know, this one just resolves in someone's death potentially, and that's someone who's an innocent victim.
Yes. Wow. You know, and through this research, as we talk about this, it also makes me think about how there was a lot of write-ups and information on them saying that this also is a factor of this like male dominated society that we live in, and that male sexual entitlement and just that males kind of have the upper hand in the, you know, our communities and our societies, and that type of framework in your thoughts makes you, you know, believe that if you're not you know, yesing, you know, everything that your male partner is requiring of you, that they then have the power to do these types of things and actually get away with them.
Yeah. And I think, you know, so yes, that is a factor. I will say that one of the things we look at in research now too is the impact of the batterer's childhood on his decision making. And while that doesn't excuse it, it gives us a tool to be able to structure interventions for them differently, right?
Correct.
The batterers intervention programs that are often used across the national scope are what's called the Duluth model. And it's based off of the premise that men inherently batter, and it's really not an LGBTQ like kind of guideline. It's really more just factored on men. So it wasn't really created with the understanding that we would evolve into a more intersectional life.
Yes.
So it really is based on a model of the man is battering because of power and control dynamic and the patriarchy, and that they have this inherent need to control. Some of that is very true. We see that with certain men and certain types of men.
Yes.
But some of it is also a result of how we socialize men and and what we tell them is acceptable for emotion regulation. For instance, how we socialize them in anger, right? Or what we allow them to show for emotion, that tends to then cascade generationally,
right,
to how you treat your wife, how you treat your daughters. You know, if you think that it's not acceptable for you to tell your wife you're upset with her, and it's better for you to erupt and punch her in the face because that makes you more manly.
Yeah.
And then your kids see that.
Yeah.
And then, you just continue to carry that through. And we even see that with survivors. So like I had a family, grandma had been in the shelter, mom was in the shelter. Now they're coming in the shelter with granddaughter. And I don't normally say, I'm not normally so stern with survivors, but I really did look at them and say, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Like, are you all three? And when she's an adult, are we all three going to be here again? And now her daughter, you know, how do we break this up? How do we keep from doing that?
Yeah. Yeah. Is it like a self, I understand we're talking about generations and what you see as a child and it becoming what you think is your reality or all you could, you know, get. But does that then tie into your self-confidence and, you know, those types of things too? Your
self-worth, you know, what you got. And I think one of the impacts of being able to kind of see it play out in a human services environment is that you study it in college, right? And then you come out and you really see it. Like you see folks that you can clearly tell are having issues with their self-confidence, with their ability to rely on their self. Their locus of control is very external versus very internal to I'm my best person. And that's why we use empowerment-based model in domestic violence, because that's our role, is to walk beside you. Our role is not to fix it or to tell you what you should do because you listened to that from the abuser.
Right.
Our role is to walk beside you and say, okay, so let's talk about what you need. What are your needs? And then how do we help clear the path for you to get those needs met so you can be successful and build yourself up?
Wow. You know, I really had no idea. And I don't know if some of the viewers out here, by the way, viewers, we're on Facebook Live as well. So if you prefer that platform, be sure to head over there onto my Facebook page and leave some comments and questions, as later on in the chat, we are going to get to some questions for Dr. Parker. But it leads me to think about, I had no idea, Dr. Parker, that you all worked with the abusers as well. I really just thought you were helping the survivors.
So we only work with so we only work with the abusers as it relates to the court system and trying to help them structure advisory. We are actually not allowed, if the victim is part of our circle, we cannot work with the abuser because they don't want us convoluting things. And you know, one of the things that the survivors are most afraid of is being outed or having to be forced to be in a space with the abuser. And if we took that on, I think we would deny their safety.
Yeah.
But we do work with the state. Like right now, we're working with the state on designing batters intervention programs. And that comes from our work with the victims and saying, you know, what is the thing that you believe the batter needs most? What would you like to see if you had a choice? And so that's what we're working on right now with the state of Florida.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So if we're talking about the abuser, right? How do you suggest, or what are some things through your research and your experience? How can one see those warning signs, those red flags that they can identify, you know, that are unhealthy in a relationship?
So I think for a lot of us, there's a few early red flags that sometimes as women we dismiss as being cute, right? That are not cute. So things like, I want to know where you're at all the time because I love you so much, and I don't want to know where, I don't think it's appropriate for me not to know where you're at, right? But they always make it in such a cute way, like, oh, I really want to spend lots of time with you. They slowly start to erode your relationships with your family, whether that be through and your friends. They'll find reasons like, I don't really like Susie. She's out too much, always running the streets. So, you shouldn't hang out with her. She's bad news, right?
Yeah.
And no other adult in your life should be telling you who you should be hanging out with, even if that person is, is out doing,
Bad news, right?
right. I'm like, that's not for them to decide.
Yeah.
Financially, they'll start to do things like take your money or start spending your money, and then get aggressive with you when you ask, like, what are you doing with my money? Or we don't have any money to pay bills, but you are going to Amazon every day. And then that becomes a fight.
Okay.
Being cruel, right? So one of the things that we sometimes put up with in relationships is this back and forth, like when we're arguing, like we don't have an understanding of what a positive argument looks like. So we'll allow the argument to get too far. But when they start saying things like, you're the B word or you're the C word, it's an escalation point that could potentially escalate. And all of these things happen, and then you get the apology, right? Yeah. Then it becomes, and we call it like love bombing.
Yep.
So they're like, oh, I love you so much, and I can't live without you. And I used to have this tape that I used to play for my students when I would teach abnormal psych or social psych, and we would talk about the cycle of abuse.
Yes.
And it was in Iowa back in the day. And if you think about how crazy this was to think about, this is our solution for domestic violence back in the day, but there was this video or this audio voicemail that you could call and leave a voicemail if you were being abused, right? So like,
oh yeah, the hotline.
Yeah, exactly. Except it was a voicemail. Like, it wasn't like you got to talk to a real person. You left a voicemail. Yeah, that was like,
call you back after,
hopefully.
After they said sorry and
right, exactly.
moved on.
Right. So, but this woman did something for us as trainer, like from a training perspective, that was so profound, because she audio taped every voicemail he left her from the time that he was arrested for the domestic violence. Sorry.
You're muted. Okay, hold on.
Sorry.
There we go.
Anyway, so, but it really did outline the cycle by showing, like, the first phone call he makes to her out of jail is like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I love you so much. This would, I can't believe this happened. I would never do this to you. I would never hurt you. And every phone call changes a little bit. So by the end of the phone call, after like 10 or 15 phone calls, he's calling her the B word. He's telling her, I'm coming home to beat you. I'm coming when I get a hold of you. And it was very much indicative of what it is like for survivors and what that cycle looks like.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. That's good. That's good. It's good information, not good stuff.
No. I know what you mean.
But yeah, that's so good. That was one of the major questions that some of my colleagues and board members were saying they wanted to kind of us to discuss, where what are these warning signs? Let's share it with the public, and that's really some interesting stuff, so as we kind of segue into the time, we're moving into we have about 25 minutes left or so. What I want to do now is I want to kind of discuss this kind of racial divide that we have in the media as it relates to coverage of these situations and stories. So, I mean, yes, domestic violence is already not a popular topic. They don't want to talk about it really. The media kind of only wants to talk about popular things that are happening, or things even in domestic violence, if they're not, if something is not, dramatic enough or whatever. So what we have noticed though, let's take, for instance, what's happening currently in the media. I have two young ladies, one that is a friend of a friend. His daughter was murdered by the maintenance man in Orlando, Florida. That is Mia Marcano. And her father is a big time DJ here in Broward and Dade County for the Caribbean community. And so DJ Eternal Vibes, actually. And, you know, here was this young girl, you know, 19 years old, working at this apartment complex, and her coworker, who was the maintenance man at the complex, you know, broke in, or, you know, used the key that they have at the office to get into her apartment and beat her up, or, you know, whatever. And because she was not willing to go out with him and engage in, you know, a relationship with him. And so that, I didn't see that anywhere on national news, and hardly anywhere locally. I mean, there was here and there, but it's local, you know. I mean, that's, you know. But when I look at Gabby Petito, not Patino, Petito, she, I mean, her and this young man, I don't even want to say his name, but he is still at large. Where is he? What's going on? And everyone knows about it all over the world. You know, we all know about Gabby, but poor Mia didn't get the same coverage. And you know, that's not to negate what happened to Gabby at all. We're not belittling that situation, but I just want to talk to you a little bit about, you're in this every day, right? You're in the weeds of it all. And so you see this kind of stuff. Do you see what I'm saying, as far as there's this, you know, people of color just are not as important seemingly to the media, the public? What's going on with that?
Yeah, it's absolutely a correct assumption. And we talk about this a lot in my office, and we actually discussed the case, the Mia case, because there's 41 DV centers. So anytime something happens in our county, we're sharing it with each other and trying to keep up with what we can do to help.
There's 41 DV centers in the county?
In the Florida, sorry.
In the state.
Okay.
Okay.
So there's one in Orlando, and we all are connected by a membership group and a coalition, as well as we're talk all the time. So because what we do is super unique, right?
Yes.
So one of the things that we have talked about is this issue with the media. And I think it's pretty indicative of how we treat people in general in the United States. And I live here, so I can only speak to America. I've traveled overseas, and I know that there are areas that are not like this, but we don't seemingly care about anyone that isn't white. And I hate to say it like that, but as a white woman, I feel like that's something I can honestly elucidate on. It's not acceptable. And one of the things that we've talked about is, like, there are Indigenous women that have been missing in an area for years.
I could not believe it. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I could not believe that group of women is, they say, the highest, what do they say, abused or murdered.
I mean, every single thing you can do to a woman, that group of women has dealt with, and it never gets any press. It's like they don't exist in real life.
Right on.
And the same thing happens for Black women, or Latina women. It does not matter if they're not white. It doesn't get the press. And it almost makes it, and I just had a conversation with some of my staff. We have a racism initiative on our campus that talks a lot about these issues, because we get into Broward and we talk about it. And we really push back on some of the folks, like, you're doing an injustice. Additionally, we've got all of these complications because folks don't want to call the police on their husband and then have him get shot on the lawn. They may not be mad. They may not be happy with the fact that he's abusing them.
Right.
But you don't want him shot because you've had to call the police to protect yourself.
Right.
And those are the conversations we have in the shelter all the time. Like, do I call the police? I mean, survivors will say, I don't know, Linda, like, if I call the police, he might die. Like, I just know that the police, and it's not inherently that there is a mistrust. Like, we have to be honest about that. And we can't shadow things in a way that makes it something that it isn't. And we know this is a problem. And I wish that, you know, one of the things we've talked about is having a press meeting with the DV centers, and anyone else that wants to join and talk about how this impacts all these various communities, because it does impact them. And it impacts all of us really, because it doesn't matter if you're not a person of color, if the information isn't getting out there.
That's right. That's right.
And who wants to come forward and be minimized? You want folks to come forward and talk about their experiences, but then you're not going to do anything, or you're going to treat it differently.
Right. Right.
And
it's not even worth it then.
No. And like you said, I don't take away from Gabby's parents.
Absolutely.
I have a mom, I'm a daughter, I have 3 daughters and a son. If any of my daughters or children were something bad happened to them, I would absolutely be devastated, and I can't even imagine. But this is a problem, folks. And even Gabby's parents were like, we're getting all this media. And I don't, there's all these other people.
Yes.
Even they recognize it.
Right. Right.
While the microphones are in their face.
Right.
Like,
right.
Like, we don't know why. And, people are kind of blaming them. And I'm like, it's not really their fault. This is a societal problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the media really needs to be held more accountable for this. I think they really, really got to do a better job with, stop talking in the boardroom, about what story we're going to tell based on these things, these norms that, got to be debunked. They are really, I think, a major part of the problem. And maybe our government, our local legislation, they need to maybe start getting on that part of it more, because we only see what we see, what we're told is happening, and I think the media plays a really big role in this.
And think about where all people get their news right now, or they get their information. Like, it's not like back in the
fake news, social media.
Right. Exactly. But I mean, that's where a majority of people, or at least a good portion of people, get information. And so if the information coming out to them, we've seen it in other instances, but the information is not indicative of what your life is like. I'm like, come on, it's not real. It's not real, and it doesn't work. And then additionally, it impacts our survivors by, who cares about us?
Yeah.
And is it safe for me to go to this place? Because I never get to hear anything about people that look like me. So how do I even know they're going to accept me? It creates this whole dichotomy of problems that they don't even understand, and I don't think necessarily want to.
Nope. Yeah. This is good. This is good stuff. I'm so thankful that we have you on this platform. We have with us Dr. Linda Parker from the Women in Distress. She is president and CEO of Women in Distress of Broward County, and we are discussing domestic violence. So this has been a phenomenal chat. What I want to do now is, Doc, I want us to take some questions from our viewers and those that are tuning in, while they are typing us up those questions to ask you if they have any at all. Usually we have some questions come from our viewers, but as they're doing that, I want to ask you to share with us some of Dr. Parker's, let's say the top 5, Dr. Parker's top 5 tips on young women dealing with domestic violence. What are some top 5 tips that they can do to cope with these experiences?
So I think the first thing you have to understand is there is a ton of resources. So my tip is find the resource, right? So we're the resource in Broward County, but we also understand that you've got other people you could reach out to. So reach out to them, right? Don't be afraid to say something, because we can't heal it if we don't know that it needs to be healed, right? Second, I would say, if you know someone that's in domestic violence, don't leave them. You don't have to like their choices, but don't leave somebody stranded, because they're going to need you when they decide to leave, and they need to be there. I think one of the things in terms of, I saw somebody ask, and I know that you're going to answer the questions, but I saw somebody about walking aside. Yeah. And I think it's important to be with them as they need you. I think sometimes as nurturers, like, I'm a person who likes to fix, like I'm a fixer and a doer. Yeah. So sometimes that can be overwhelming to people. Yeah. So my want of helping you can sometimes be more than your want of helping yourself. So, or it may not be what you need. So when you're dealing with someone who's going through it, ask them what they need from you. So do you need me to listen? You know, do you need me to attend court with you? Do you want me to go to the center with you so you can talk to a therapist? Do you want me to go to church with you and talk to the pastor? That's how you can walk along. The one thing I will say is you have to be careful also, because batters are dangerous to everyone. The police don't like to go out on domestic violence calls. The victim doesn't want to be involved in that. And we see too many cases of folks, like there was just a case at Wendy's drive-thru where there's a woman sitting in the drive-thru. The batter accidentally finds her. Like he just ran across her while she's waiting in the drive-thru, boxed her in, and then shot her and her friend.
Oh my God.
Because while they're in the drive-thru at Wendy's, unable to move, right? They can't get the car out.
Right.
This poor friend was just sitting in the car.
Yeah.
So, you know, I would tell people your safety always, the safety of the victim and the safety of you are the two most important things you can do, because either one of you not being here does not solve the situation.
Right.
And, you know, for survivors, don't be ashamed. 1 in 3 women have gone through this. Many of the folks that work in domestic violence, myself included, have either been previous first survivors or secondary survivors. So we've been there. So don't be ashamed of coming forward to ask for help. Sometimes asking for help is the hardest things we can do, especially as women, because we sometimes get socialized to think that asking for help is a weakness. It is not. It takes strength to open up and say, I need assistance.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. So as far as the tips then that you just gave, would you say that some of those tips, by the way, they were amazing. They were amazing. They were great. What would you say that you have any additional tips for the other side, like those that are trying to support and that are dealing with the family or friend that is going through this?
Don't judge. Because that would be my first tip. Don't judge and don't make judgments on their choices. I saw another chat earlier that said something about everyone says it's so easy to leave, you should just leave. This is a multi-layered problem, right? This is a very deep problem, and it's even deeper brought about if you have kids or if you have other things like you're not a legal citizen, right? Or you don't have the immigration paperwork. It's very complicated. So don't judge the person. Don't try to force them to do something or get assistance until they're ready, because that will make them cut you off, because they're going to say that person is still in their ear all the time. And that wears you down as a human. And if you've got someone on the other side saying, you just need to leave him, why don't you just go get help? Why don't you blah, blah, blah? You're going to distance yourself from that person. And that person actually has good points, but you can't hear them. Don't assume that calling for assistance for the survivor is the right thing to do. You can get someone killed by doing that. So we won't even, as a center, if you called me tomorrow and said, I have a friend who's a domestic abuse victim and here's her phone number, please call her, we won't do that, because I have no idea what I'm calling and walking her into. And I don't know if her number's safe. When we talk to survivors, we have them give us a safe number and a number from someone that we can call if we need to know if they're okay.
Oh my.
So just giving us their number and saying, please call them and make sure and check in with them or do whatever, we can't do that. And you should be careful not to do that too. It can be a very bad situation.
Wow.
So that's probably one of the biggest ones, because people want to help, right? So they're like, oh, call my friend, or hey, let me report this. You should always report like domestic violence as it's happening. Like if you're at your friend's house and an argument pops off between the two people, you should call 911. But don't try to jump in and don't try to, insert yourself in a way that you could end up being injured. Okay.
Got it. Oh, wow. Okay. So what would be the initial, we're taking questions now, I'm taking them. What would be the initial first step that someone would do to leave? What would the first thing they can do to leave?
So I always tell folks, if you have time to prep, you mentioned the bag and the paperwork, but we really, in Florida, we call it the hurricane bag. And so we tell folks to if you have the time, get your papers together, because those are the things that are going to get you furthest down the path. if we have to pull, and we'll do it, like we'll pay for birth certificates, social security cards, all of that stuff. But if you can get it, it makes it much more quick to leave. When you're ready to go, make sure that you have a plan. And that plan is very individualized depending on the person and their lifestyle and what's going on. Sure. And what the abuser's level of frustration is. For instance, if the abuser is very volatile and you have a case where he is prone to choking you out or hurting you very badly, it's best to really safety plan with the police to help escort you from the residence if that's possible. If not, you need to flee when he's not there. Make sure you have a safe place to go that he does not know where you're going. Whether that be the domestic violence shelter. Sometimes, folks will go to their parents because they think that's safe. If he's really high lethality, or there's really an instance where you feel like he's going to know where you're at and you're feared for your life, don't go there.
Right.
Because sometimes leaving escalates. Folks ask about injunctions. We recommend injunctions if it's appropriate for you, but only you know whether that's an appropriate step or whether that's going to inflame him more. And we do have a law firm that does just injunctions for free. That's all they do, all because we do a lot of them. And they will tell the survivors the same thing. Maybe this isn't the best choice for you right now. Let's get you into a safe location and then we'll file right away. Or there is a time frame of service. So if I've been in a domestic violence situation and he flees, like that situation going on with Gabby and he's gone, if there was a restraining order, there's a limit to if she gets an initial restraining order, there's a limit to when he can be served before it's negated.
Yeah.
So we need to be really careful that when you can get him served, and that's when you file.
Okay.
Even if that means that there's a time when he comes to the courthouse for something else and he gets served. So all of these pieces are really strategic. So we often recommend that even if you don't need the services of the shelter or whatever, you call the hotline. Because the hotline are trained to talk you through a safety plan, what your situation looks like, considerations. They'll give you suggestions, but they're not gonna say, well, you should do this. They're gonna say, well, based on this information you're giving me, I really am concerned about X, Y, and Z. Do you have a plan, and how can we help you make a plan?
Okay. I gotta imagine your shelter has to have a lot of security around there, right? There's got to be a lot. It's got to be pretty scary.
We are completely gated off. Yeah, we are completely gated off, and we have a security guard at the front. And you can't get past anywhere onto the property without getting screened past that security or without badging in electronically. So, and then all internal doors are also on an electronic lock system. So you can't, even if someone was to get over the gate, it would be very difficult for them to get into any of the buildings or into any of the spots where people would be located. They would get accosted way before they would ever get that far. In fact, today, this poor person we have working on campus, the gate opened and he came behind someone else and they were on him like that quick. And he was like, and I was like, I know, but you can't follow somebody into the gate. Like they're going to be on you so quickly. Like you will have no time. He was like, I couldn't even believe it. They were like, I was like, yeah, we don't play around. We didn't know where you were coming from. So we don't play around.
Wow. That's a phenomenal thing then to make sure that you feel safe when you do try to take that step,
Absolutely.
So a question here we have, we've been talking a lot about women, right? And I can only imagine that as much as we don't hear about women and as much as women don't report when they're going through this, I can only imagine how much double or triple or whatever that percentage is for the men's side that are actually abused. But there's this stigma behind men, going and saying that something is going on in their household because they think that the courts are going to say, oh, come on, right?
Right. And just like I was talking about earlier about how we socialize men to not deal with their emotion. Yeah. So guess what happened when they get abused? So they don't know how to deal with that. And then on top of that, they're told like, you need to be these big alpha males and so they get with someone that abuses them and they feel minimized by that and they just deal and they don't come for help. So we have a separate support group for men. We have, we also have even though we're women in distress, we take all distress.
Yeah.
So,
I saw the mission. It says everybody.
So, and then in the shelter, we actually have an area that's dedicated to special population, and that includes men, LGBTQ+, anyone that is a special consideration. Like sometimes a lot of times we get moms with teenage boys. Yep. And teenage boys are not trying to hang out with all of these folks in the shelter. So we put them in a different wing so that they can have a little breather without having all of the ladies in their face all the time. Yeah. And same thing with like moms with lots of kids or, so we have an area just for men, and we don't, it's not really to segregate men and women, but their needs are very different when it comes to domestic violence. Right. Okay. Very good that you work with men too. You know, that's, and you know, the transgender, the LGBT plus community as well. So here we have a couple of individuals asking, how can they help? How can they volunteer? And oddly enough, they're all a part of my team. So we all want to know. What can we do? So we do take volunteers. We love volunteers. Our mission really needs volunteers, and you can do a variety of things. So we take volunteers at the thrift store. We do volunteers. We have folks that come in and do group with the survivors that are volunteers. You can come and volunteer on a holiday, like right now coming up is a Thanksgiving. We generally serve around, I think it was 650 families last year for Thanksgiving. So they just come and pick up their Thanksgiving meal, and then we send it out. You can help pack those. You can come for Christmas. You can pretty much, I'm pretty open. We're pretty open organization. Now, obviously, there are some roles that have to have a little more training than others. Like to deal with survivors in the state of Florida, you have to have privilege, which is so it's kind of akin to like a lawyer. And so to get that privilege, there's some training involved and certifications that have to come. It's about 30 hours. Okay. But if it's just an occasional volunteer, it's not that. But if you wanted to come and work with the survivors on a deeper level than volunteer, that would be a requirement. But other than that, we use volunteers for all kinds of stuff. Yeah, I know. If we just go to your website, right? Which is Women in Distress. What's the website? Womenindistress.org. Okay, so I know when you go to the website, there's a big hyperlink that you can click and say, I'd like to volunteer, and you fill out like a form or something, right? And then that's exactly right. And that goes to our primary prevention department, and they will reach out to you and talk you through steps. Okay, very good. Well, I know we're going to be calling you anyway, because we're going to. Well, I can't wait, because let me tell you. You guys need help? Like, I mean, everybody. Like volunteer help. Yeah, we need help, period. But I mean, COVID has been tough on all nonprofits. Yes, it's just been a mess. Yep. We're over here too. I know you are. I know. Yeah. Okay. Well, so here's the deal. We are 1 minute over, but I want to close out this with, first of all, thanking you so much for this conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I learned a lot, and I hope everyone else who was tuned in learned a lot, and how we can help advocate and even educate others on what they can do and how they can serve as well. You have been you're a great speaker, and I can see why you're a great professor and a great leader of this organization that is doing some very tough work out here in these streets of the county of Broward, which ultimately will impact the nation and the world. So I want to thank you for that, for being here, and for your work, your time, your energy that you put into every single day in this work that, like I said earlier, it takes a very special person to do this kind of work, and you are that. So first of all, I want to say that to you. I also want to just say, though, or ask you rather, to share with everyone, what do you all have? Is there anything happening? I know you said Thanksgiving's coming up and you have something going on where volunteers are needed more probably than normal. But are there any events or programs or what's happening currently that we need to kind of know about? So we've got the Thanksgiving event coming up. Our golf tournament is in November. It's a fundraiser. Yep.
Only
so
in
that's
Florida
on
can
the
you do a golf
I know,
tournament.
right? In November, right? Last year it was January. So I'm glad that we're doing it in November this year. We've got early part next year, we've got a women's empowerment forum. And that's actually the speaker that's coming was one of the young ladies involved in the Nasser. She's one of the gymnasts.
Yes.
So she's coming to speak at the Women's Empowerment Luncheon. Wow. And I can get dates for that. And then our Starfish Luncheon is in May. And all of those are fundraisers, and that's always a good thing. As it relates to the clients, we've really tried to do groups and all kinds of things all year long. So they get activities and therapy, and anyone's welcome. In fact, I reached out to a group the other day for yoga. We have somebody that comes that gives massages, like just stuff to try to make sure that they get what they need.
Yeah, I like it. Okay. And so where can they follow you on social media? What's your handle?
So Women in Distress has a lovely, I mean, you're welcome to follow me, but it's really not that exciting. Like I don't really have, my social media is Women in Distress. So I just push out their stuff because I got off social media a long time ago because folks. So the COVID really brought out the best in folks.
Oh my gosh. So many friends.
Folks off. So I cut everybody off and just decided to wipe my Facebook and social media. But Women in Distress has a Twitter at Women in Distress, the Facebook post. We've got an Instagram account, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on there that we talk about upcoming stuff. So please follow and really take a look at what's going on. We are going to start looking at some other things on social media because we don't use it probably as much as we should.
Sure.
But a lot of our events and our asks are out there. Like we just did an ask for Halloween costumes because we do a huge fall festival. That's tomorrow with the clients, and that'll be about 150 kiddos. And we provide the Halloween costumes.
Oh, very nice.
And the parents get to pick them out for the kids. So it's nice for them to have some normalcy.
Yep.
In a world that really isn't normal for them right now.
Right. Absolutely. Oh my. Well, this has been tremendous. I feel like I have done a good thing today with talking to you, and bringing this to the public. I feel good, so this has been a great thing. We have thoroughly enjoyed this. We are going to be chatting again with you offline to see how we as Whoamentoring Works can be partnered with you on some things in the future. And of course, aside from that, we will be, volunteering here and there individually as well to help support the work that you are doing out here. So thank you again so much, Dr.
And thank you guys for having us and having me. And I really appreciate it. Just giving me a little bit of time to talk about what we do and get the word out.
We're honored. We're honored. All right, Dr. Parker. Well, I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening and week, and we'll be in touch.
All right. You have a great night.
You too.
Everyone.
Bye.